USS Indiana is a Tier VIII Premium American battleship, and the reward for the July 2026 campaign in World of Warships Legends. This is a South Dakota class battleship and the third one to be put in Legends following the Alabama many years ago, and then the Massachusetts sometime long ago as well. Both of those are South Dakota class battleships, just like Indiana. And the main question I've seen from a lot of people in the community is what sets this thing apart from those two? What can it do that they cannot? Well, the main thing would be this sonar consumable. We can use it here as we come around the island to catch sight of the Shimakaze, obliterate him with the main battery guns, and he does try to smoke up, but he can't hide because this sonar has a ship acquisition range of 4.7 kilometers, so he ultimately gets taken down by the secondaries. I suppose 4.7 kilometers is not as big of a ship acquisition range as some other sonars in the game, like German sonar, for example. But having this thing on a South Dakota class battleship, I think, is pretty useful, and obviously neither the Alabama nor the Massachusetts can actually do that. They could both push in like this, I suppose, and try to brawl with the Rhode Island, but they're not going to be able to spot things through smoke screens with the use of sonar or have advanced warning of torpedoes that the sonar gives. Other than that, though, this thing is pretty similar to, I'd say, the Massachusetts more than the Alabama, because it can be built for a full secondary build, and that's what we've opted to do in this relatively short battle and in the next full battle that you're going to see. I'll tell you, though, as we're brawling here with Rhode Island, that I played 19 battles in USS Indiana yesterday, so I think I've got a pretty good feel for the ship now. They've been good battles, too. I managed to win 15 out of 19, which so far is a 79% win rate. I expect that to go down as time goes on, but it's a good indication that the ship is pretty potent. And we do win this battle here at the last minute, taking out the Shimakaze and the Rhode Island. It was a 6v6 because I'm sure somebody turned off crossplay. You can see it's all PlayStation players. And the next battle that I'm going to show you is also a bit of a short match. It's a 7v7. Somebody turned off crossplay in this one too, I'm sure. Don't worry, it wasn't me, and I wouldn't be showing you these battles if they weren't the most interesting ones I had played out of the 19. Believe me, I've got a lot of battles with about 130,000, 140,000 damage done. Got a lot of those recorded. But as you might imagine with Update Monday, most of them are very uninteresting blowouts that I don't think show off the capabilities of the ship all that well. This one is sort of a semi-blowout, but I think it does show off the capabilities of Indiana. So, it's a bit of a slow start. We'll run down the specs as usual, but first I'll show you my commander build. Since this is a campaign ship, I've made a rule to test all campaign ships exclusively with free-to-play commanders. That way you don't get a perspective from me that's skewed by a commander build you might not have access to. So with this being a secondary focus battleship, or at least having the ability to be, we are using Willis Lee as the commander. Two inspirations are Kondo and Swirsky. Or not Kondo and Swirsky, sorry. Kondo and Hipper for extra secondary range. You could, of course, spec into full secondary with Hipper and Haruna or somebody else. Or I guess you could spec into accuracy. Certainly wouldn't hurt the USS Indiana. I will say one unique thing about this ship is that in the second module slot, it does not have access to propulsion mod at all. We're running damage control mod instead. You could go with rudder shift, I suppose, and that wouldn't be bad. But damage control mod for a little bit of extra survivability, I think that's a good thing, particularly with the newly buffed Equilibrium of Power skill, allowing cruisers to have even more of a fire chance, along with more HE pen. The damage control system reduces the fire duration by 15%, which could save you a lot of HP in a full duration burn. I think the reason Indiana doesn't have access to propulsion mod is because it's got propulsion built in, and it does accelerate pretty quickly. Much better than normal battleships, I would say. Anyway, the specs that I'm going to read to you are influenced by the Willis Lee build, so keep that in mind. We'll begin with the survivability. 70,000 hit points even. I feel like that's maybe on the low end for a Tier 8 battleship. Maybe not, but certainly not as high as some of those out there. And in line with the survivability, we do have a repair party. It's not a special repair party, it's got a consumable cooldown time of 80 seconds, which is typical. I was thinking maybe it would have a quicker cooldown on that repair party, like, for example, the Ohio or something like that, but no, it's just conventional. And it's not a super heal either. It restores 498 HP per second for a duration of 28 seconds. Pretty standard there, but of course with the Master Mechanic skill, you can get 5 of them. Another good reason to opt in for Willis Lee at the helm. But in line with the survivability, the armor scheme is slightly different than both the Massachusetts and Alabama as well. It's mostly the same except for the belt armor, which has 38 millimeters on the upper belt, and even on the torpedo side plating, it's 38 millimeters, as well as the deck. Both Alabama and Massachusetts have a 38 millimeter deck, but their upper belt armor is 32, and so is their torpedo protection plate. 32 can of course be overmatched by a lot of things you'd find at Legendary tier. Not so much with 38. That little bit of extra plating will allow you, when properly angled, to bounce Yamato shells, incomparable shells, anything that can overmatch 32. So that's a nice thing, and plus 38 millimeters will shatter a lot of cruiser HE, unless maybe somebody's doing some kind of crazy equilibrium of power build. So there is that. Indiana definitely has that going for it over the other two South Dakota class battleships, and its citadel is slightly under the water, so it's probably not all that easy to hit, and all in all, the ship is pretty tanky. Along with that, by the way, keep in mind we do have that sonar, which of course is useful for spotting torpedoes, but were we to get hit by a torpedo, the Indiana's base torpedo protection is 49%. Although some skill on our commander build has buffed that to 53%. 53% has got to be one of, if not the highest torpedo damage reduction numbers in the game. This thing is functionally immune to torpedoes if you play it right, and even if you get hit by a stray one or two, doesn't hurt that much compared to other battleships with less protection there. As for the main battery guns, I was kind of hoping to see something similar to Alabama's main battery, coupled with Massachusetts' secondary power. Not quite. These are 9 406 millimeter guns. They have 17.2 kilometers base range, and they reload in 28 seconds, which I suppose is a little bit faster than the typical battleship with this many guns. Turret traverse time is 40 seconds base, which I think is slightly faster than the Massachusetts, which I believe has 45. So I suppose there's that. That's helpful in close-range brawling situations. But as you can see there from the, I suppose, dispersion against the Preußen, the accuracy on these main battery guns does leave a little bit to be desired. It's got a sigma value of 1.8. I checked, and the Alabama is 1.9. Dispersion numbers are similar, but we are a little bit less accurate than Alabama, which I feel is one of the more accurate battleships in the game. This feels much more like Massachusetts, where sometimes you shoot these shells and it's a real shotgun type dispersion pattern, but sometimes it is pinpoint accurate, and the guns do hurt. The AP has a maximum AP shell damage of 13,100. HE is 5,700 with a 36% fire chance, although I haven't found myself shooting HE all that much. No improved pen angles or anything like that on the AP, and the muzzle velocity is actually really slow, 701 meters per second, which I think is a lot lower than most of the battleships out there. These are very floaty shells, particularly at long distance. You probably need to give more lead than you think you do. As for the secondaries, well, they're the Massachusetts type. There are 20 of them, 127 millimeter guns in 10 double mounts. They've got a reload time of 4.5 seconds, and the maximum HE shell damage is 2,000. However, they pen 25 millimeters of armor, which of course is not a lot. That is enough to get through the superstructure of battleships, which is why we get the skill kill or close quarters expert on the Preußen there. And as you can see from the couple of hits we're scoring against the USS Wisconsin, well, they can pen his superstructure just as well as they can Preußen's. They're also okay at starting fires. They've got a 5% fire chance. And when it comes to larger capital ships like battleships and cruisers, mostly I think they're for the fire chance. They do a little bit of damage against all those ships, but not a ton. They are pretty good at shredding destroyers, though, because they are pretty accurate, much like the Massachusetts secondaries, so there is that, I suppose. I just build for them because, well, you can. And I think this ship is more fun to play in a brawling type scenario at close range with the secondaries. Of course, with the Hipper inspiration, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the range is 10.7. It's a base range of 7 km. You can probably buff it to just over 11 if you went with Hipper and Haruna instead of doing my sort of concealment compromised build with Hipper and Kondo. As for the AA, I don't really know. It's got an aggregate AA defense rating of 90 for whatever that's worth. Maneuverability, though, is really good. It's a bit slower than other battleships, 27.5 knot top speed. You can, of course, reduce that if you use gyrating drill bits. So if you do go for a main gun accuracy build, I'd stay away from gyrating drill bits. 27.5 I think is fine, but the turning circle radius is a mere 710 meters. That's really small. And then we got a 15.3 second rudder shift. That means this thing is really maneuverable, very good for dodging torpedoes, along with the sonar, of course, which we haven't had to use in this battle. And then the concealment, with the Kondo inspiration, we've got it down to 12.8. You can do better than that if you wanted to spec into double concealment for some reason. But 12.8 is really, really good. And this is about the end of this battle here. As you can see, we're going to get into a brawling situation with an Alaska, who is laser focused on killing the enemy destroyer. There's also a USS Ohio left alive, but he can't shoot us. So this is a 1v1 versus the Alaska. And as you can see from this engagement, the secondaries aren't exactly doing a lot of damage. They are aiming right for the belt, which they can't penetrate, so really only good for starting fires. But anyway, USS Indiana is basically like if you took a Massachusetts, gave it slightly better armor in the midsection of the ship, that does go, I'd say, a fairly long way to increasing its tankiness, and then gave it a sonar. That's basically what you've got with the USS Indiana. And whether you think that is worth it for a campaign ship, I don't know. But I'll tell you that I've had fun with the ship. I think it's solid. It's certainly not the best campaign that they've ever released. Maybe not even the best July campaign ship they've ever released. But there's nothing that I can point to on this ship and say it's really bad, not worth playing, nothing like that. I think it's at the very least decent, and I would personally pick it up. That might have something to do with the fact that I myself was born in the state of Indiana, and this ship is, of course, named after that state, so maybe there's some aspect to that, but honestly, I like the ship. I think it's a fun brawler with the sonar. I'd rather, I think, play it than the Massachusetts, even though it's a tier higher. I think I prefer this ship to that one. So I would recommend it, but I could see if you don't think it's all that worth picking up, because essentially it is a Massachusetts with sonar and some minor differences. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.